What am I to do?
Welcome to He Said, She Said Razor Branding Podcast with Michael Russo and Jaci Russo. To learn more about how to improve your brand, visit brandRUSSO.com.
Welcome to the podcast. Michael, I am very excited about our guest today and the conversation we just had with Will.
He was great. Yeah, I mean, we've had our experiences with legal marketing and advertising over the years. We still do some adjacent with support firms that help in the legal industry, and it is a bit of a minefield sometimes. What they do is very unique and different than what you see on the highways and on your TVs. And when you think of legal advertising, you think of somebody, overly dramatic. This is not a paid spokesperson, that kind of thing.
Right.
Or really colorful, loud billboards that are lining the interstate. And they're different than that. They have a lot more scientific approach and strategic approach to branding, which I think is very important.
Well, plus they're corporate law versus personal injury law. So Those are right off the bat very different.
Mm-hmm. Which forces you to really know who you're talking to, forces you to be specific in your marketing efforts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, his international experience has really set him up for success now that he's back in the US, because it's such a great way to look at marketing as a whole when you don't have the cheat of all the tech tools. I mean, he had to do it old school, build relationship ways. And I think that makes it a really great learning platform.
Yeah, and the human side of it. I mean, he talked a lot about, culture building and how people connect. And, there isn't a lot of differentiation a lot of times, so you really got to figure out those things out on the fly. You can't just say, I'm just like everybody else. You got to kind of prove your weight,
Right. I love what he said about shopping other companies and going through and understanding their process so he could make sure that what his firm was doing was better. That's so smart. I think people do not spend nearly enough time in that level of research with their customers or their competitors.
No. What is the process like? What is that buying journey like into acquiring,
Yeah.
And it's not hard to do. It's simple.
Yeah. But if you don't know what they're doing, you don't know that your way is better.
Yeah.
Or maybe not better. Anyway, y'all stick around and listen, because I think that Will brings great insight and it's a good chat.
When the day is through.
Will, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. We try to rotate different industries and stories all around marketing, though, because it's a marketing conversation. And so I appreciate you making time for us so we could talk about legal marketing. Because, as we talk about different professional service organizations, whether it's engineering firms or architecture firms or CPA firms, every single industry has its own challenges. So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges around legal firm marketing?
Well, there's a lot. I would say it's not so much of a challenge, but a little bit of a difference, because we're working with lawyers and attorneys. And also, each law firm is a little bit different in what they do, right? Are you a personal injury law firm, right? You might be going the billboard route, right? Or the commercial route. But if you're a corporate law firm and you help corporate clients, the way you approach content and advertising and marketing is very different. So there's lots of challenges within the legal industry, which are quite different than others. And then even within the legal industry, are you in a big corporate firm, or are you in a small, like, gung-ho guerrilla marketing, sort of setup? So there's a lot of challenges which we can dive into.
Oh, I would agree. And so for y'all, are you working directly with in-house attorneys? So do you have to kind of take that balance of providing the assistance and depth of talent and time that they need while also not throwing them under the bus?
Yes. When I tell people I work in legal marketing, they're like, "What do you mean?" They don't really understand what I do.
Right.
We essentially help the attorneys run the business without doing sort of the legal sort of aspect of it. So it can be varied, and it really does depend on the size of the law firm. big national firms, they'll have specific groups of marketers doing specific things. Oh, your events, you do events. Oh, your content, you do content. But for that mid-size, smaller law firm, the marketing team really does everything day to day. It's quite different. So you might be doing an event, you might be updating the website, you might be coding the website, you might be helping the attorney draft a LinkedIn post, right, on how not to sound so salesy and things like that. So there's really a lot that we are doing, and really in the trenches with the attorneys, as it were, really helping them figure out how they can put their best foot forward.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. And so, how do you go about that? I mean, that's a very direct, kind of targeted marketing. You're not doing the TV and the billboards like your personal injury friends. So what's your approach?
Well, I'm going to speak for me and some of my previous law firm experience, but also for everyone that I've talked to over the years. You know, the legal marketing community is quite close knit. So we commiserate with each other. We talk a lot about all of this, but you have to be very intentional. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to do this day. I'm going to do this quarter or whatever." You have to be very intentional from the outset and be very clear with leadership. Like, okay, this is our plan. Like, we have a strategy, right? And if you're lucky, you're in a firm where marketing is actually brought in to those strategy sessions early. Because in Southeast Asia, where I first started in legal marketing, um, the marketing team was brought in after the fact, right? But now here in the US, we're kind of at the table early on. So the teams have to be very intentional and map out exactly how you're going to help each practice group, right? Litigation practice group is very different from real estate, which is very different from IP. So each practice group, each team, each individual within that team needs sort of a plan or an approach, because if you don't, there's going to be lots of inconsistencies. One practice group is going to be pumping out tons of content where another practice group is going to be, it's crickets. So from an outside perspective of the firm, oh, you guys don't do that. You guys don't do IP, or you guys don't do that. Well, actually we do. It's just the marketing team is so inundated with all the other practices, they haven't had time to devote to everyone equally. So intentionality, planning, all that sort of marketing 101.
I always pause because I want to see if Michael's ready to jump in or not. He takes him a while. He has to think about it.
Well, no, I'm just, like I said, I mean, legal space is such a tricky world right now. I mean, we do work all over the country, and we've traveled a little bit and seen in different markets, different ways. In the South down here, especially in Louisiana, where we're located, it is a battlefield. There are so many lawyers in South Louisiana.
Well, and that's all personal injury stuff, though, which is different than the corporate law.
It is. But I think that crowds the space sometimes. That becomes what everybody thinks it is. And when you think of legal marketing and advertising, like that's what that is. And all of a sudden it becomes noise in the space. Do you find that's a problem where you're battling that kind of world where you're like, no, we're different. We're over here, or purposely trying to counter that and be something different?
Yeah, there's lots of noise. So in the US, well, the US legal regulations and marketing is like the wild, wild west, right? In Southeast Asia, like you weren't even allowed to put up an advertisement. A lot of the buildings, you weren't even allowed to put your logo, right? So a lot of the jurisdictions were very, let's just say, traditional, right? Whereas here, like jumping back into the US a year and a half ago, it's like, oh my God, I can do like I can do whatever I want. But that doesn't mean I should. So yes, it's super noisy here. Well, a lot of times it's a personal injury law firm. Nothing against them, that they do help a lot of people who are in need. But from my perspective, it's really being very intentional about who we want to target and getting in front of them at the right time with the right content, right? We're not just writing practice group plans and just throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks. It's got to be very intentional. Oh, this group of people, healthcare professionals, for example, right? We know they have like 4 different sort of legislation pieces coming up. So what content can we help write and clarify about that and get it out to them? We don't need to splash everything about healthcare on LinkedIn, because a lot of our followers, majority of our followers, don't even care about the healthcare piece. So that specific tailored content goes directly to the inboxes or to the attorneys, and then the marketing team can help them craft an email to send to 3 of their contacts. Oh, hey, by the way, our healthcare industry group, they wrote this really great article. You might find it useful because X, Y, and Z. So from a corporate law firm, we don't really care for out there and, being so noisy. We care, about the word of mouth experience and referrals and all of that.
I love that. You mentioned earlier about that intersection of kind of legal and IT and executive leadership, and I mentioned the in-house attorneys. So how do you balance that and keep it kind of moving forward without losing momentum and manage the tension of those different kind of eyes that are on it?
Yes, there's lots of people who work in a law firm. It's not just attorneys and
Right.
and the marketers. There's the BD team, the marketing team, the HR, the IT. So the tension kind of shows up around speed. Like, how fast does this need to go out? There's competing priorities. Oh, attorney, it needs to go out today.
Right.
Well, we have to do a quality check and maybe tomorrow morning, right? Ownership, who owns the project? If we're rolling out a new tech piece for attorneys, right, who owns that? Is that an IT ownership? Is that a business development marketing team ownership? And then the whole risk part of it, right? We are in a regulated, very highly regulated space, so there's that aspect to it. So I would say marketing often ends up in the middle. And trying to turn all of that into something practical and market facing. So what we're trying to accomplish, we have to figure out what is the goal. What's good enough? When will it be good enough that we can send it out? If those things are fuzzy or projects get stuck in these sort of review loops, the chains of review, and nobody feels responsible for pushing them over the line, and things just stagnate. So I think you really have to have that clear ownership and who gives the sign off. And sometimes firms are set up by consensus basis, like everyone has to agree, but that's where things get bogged down.
Yeah, for sure. How do you balance the marketing that you're doing for the firm in relation to the marketing that you may need to do for individual partners within the firm? How do those balance?
That's a very good question, because law firms are made up of attorneys also, and they are a big part of what we're selling, right? We are selling their experience and their knowledge and the solutions that we provide clients. So yes, sometimes an individual may want something tailored, or they want it in a specific style, or they have their own preference, and sometimes that makes sense, right? If there's a very niche thing, we put it out, that's fine, or maybe have them put it on their LinkedIn first, and then the firm can comment. But sometimes it kind of pulls too far away from what we're trying to present as a firm, right? So you just kind of have to figure it out and, try to do your best in balancing those, and just making sure that you have a set of guidelines for the firm and there's consistency. So yeah.
I was thinking the same thing when Jaci brought that up, just because I have lawyers in the family. I think Jaci was a lawyer in another life, or could have easily been one. And one of our clients out of the Northeast does global e-discovery work. And
Yeah.
talking to lawyers in general, they speak a different language. And it a lot of times, in the best of ways, but they want to speak the way they speak, not realizing that sometimes everybody else doesn't speak that way. And so that's where the rub comes in.
Michael, you're speaking my language, like exactly, right? The marketing team, business development team, we have to be translators. Because the attorneys are taught and drilled like fact A plus fact B equals outcome C. But clients in client meetings or in legal alerts or content, they want the outcome first, right? They want to skim it. They want to know what that is. So we have to kind of train them to flip that way of thinking. And we're very good. We can help them and walk them through and, identify who you're trying to target. Is this written for other in-house counsel? Okay, great. Let's do 2 pieces. Let's do one that's fully fleshed out and all legalese and all of that and pursuant to subsection 42 of clause, whatever it is. And then let's do sort of an abridged version, which we can help you with, right? That can kind of go out to the masses and be consumable and for people. And we can get those sound bites and make it useful. So you get the really good content for the website and SEO and all those keywords that you want. But then on social, you write a sort of different version. So that's where I think the marketing teams can really help attorneys. If the marketing team understands what they're writing, like what they're reading. Sometimes I'll read a paragraph. I'm like, I really don't understand what this means. So oftentimes it's just me like, hey, John Smith, can you walk me through what is it that we're trying to do here? And then once the teams are comfortable doing that, it's really easy to make the attorneys shine and present that content in multiple different repurposed ways.
Yeah, I'd sent over a creative brief just a couple weeks back, and it was pretty standard stuff. It's a couple of pages, and it walked through basically the marketing, the external facing language that we wanted to use, and the CEO got his hands on it and sent me back a 35-page noted brief with footnotes, and I mean, it was. I was like, I don't know what to do with this now. I mean, we kind of went back and forth to kind of find a happy medium. I'm like, what you're saying is valid, and it was good stuff that he put in there. I'm like, we just can't do this. Like, there's too much. It's talking. It's over explaining. It's over clarifying, and it had so many things going on there. We really had to. I'm like, look, we just need a couple of headlines. We need to get back down to the basics of where we're talking and who we're talking to and where the vehicle is that we're using to translate that information.
Well, one thing that really helped and something that other marketers could really learn from in the professional services industries is making a template for the attorneys to use before they start writing. Like at the top, like, all right, what's the key takeaway? And the marketing team can use those key takeaways to help draft the social post, right? Who's your audience? What's like the one thing that they, draft that template and then have that available on your intranets or whatever. Do a training for attorneys or for CPAs or, whoever, who's writing the content. Get in front of them before they even start putting pen to paper, because once they start writing the article, it's really difficult to kind of, take stuff away. But if you can get, in a conversation with the attorney before they start writing, you can really help them shape, like, what is the strategy behind this? And then the marketing team can use all the fancy tools to find out what keywords are we trying to target? What are people actually searching for about this topic in Pennsylvania, in Louisiana, nationally? And then you can really create the content that people will find useful. And that's the key thing is useful content, right?
I think you have to have a thick skin too, because when you're dealing with lawyers every day, they don't pull punches and they're very direct. And I find that often I get more intimidated by it because it's I feel like I'm under cross-examination the entire time. There's always that counter.
Yes, so they're very risk averse. So they're very they don't want to try new things. But I choose to look at it as a superpower, right? Was it Mel Robbins? Like, let them be the lawyer. Okay. We will harness their dotting of I's and, making sure everything is good, and let us be the marketers, right? We are the experts. The firm hires us not you, to package this and to help you think about this in a way that a client will want to read. So yes, let them be. But it's also interesting. I've talked to a lot of BD people and people work in architecture firms or tax or things like that. They're a lot more open to trying new things. So in the legal market, I've found that lawyers are very competitive individually and by practice group. So if you're a marketer and you did a piece of content or you did something that was a bit different and it got really good traction, share that with everyone in the firm. And then the other lawyers will start to take notice and say, "Oh, what are you guys doing with that guy? Can we try that?" So yeah, let them be the attorneys. Let's find younger junior associates who are a little bit more open to doing things in a little bit different way. Let's work with them and let's showcase the heck out of the engagement and the referrals and all of that and say, see, this is what led to this. Having an article that's structured this way as opposed to this way, and do that sort of A/B testing. It's data. They love data. And how could they repeat that?
Well, and that's the thing is when we look at the data, to me, that's what makes marketing so powerful. And I feel like so many, whether it's in-house, like the attorneys you're working with, or the clients that we work with, they aren't really appreciating the necessary details for spending enough money to put in place the tracking, to really know what's working, to use the data to make good decisions. So how have you been able to structure your tech dashboards, tracking to be able to show what's work and kind of justify marketing's existence?
So I've been in the US for been back in the US for about a year and a half. And I spent about 10 years abroad, and we didn't have all that tech. So when I was in Thailand, talking to marketers in the US, I was like, oh, listening to them talk about like Sprout Social and all these sort of trackers and the funnels and the UTM parameters and links and ads and stuff. I'm like, I'm not even doing LinkedIn ads. Like I have an event that I have the email for. Like, how can I? So I'm just learning about all of the crazy stuff. But yes, it is about data. And now I'm here. I've set up all the trackers and everything. And it's one thing to set up the trackers, and it's one thing to have the data from the marketing perspective. It's another thing to take that data and pass it over to the business development team and say, oh, here are some warm leads that you can use to develop work, create work. I think marketers are sort of tracking, okay, we sent out this campaign, it got this much engagement, we tracked the link, they filled out a sign up form, or they booked a call. Yay, that's a win. That is an amazing job. But the thing that will help the most, I think, is taking that information, that data, and passing it on to the BD team, right? And say, okay, here you go. Here's like really warm leads, and this is how we would recommend you action that.
Absolutely. Well, to me, the only thing that really matters is bottom line. Everything else can be interpreted as a vanity metric. We can hope that enough of those metrics lead to an actual answer. And so I think it's fascinating when people are like, we're trying to still figure it out, because we're all figuring it out. We're all trying things. The technology is changing so fast. So what was it like for you internationally? What was that process like compared to what it's like domestically with the marketing? How was it different?
Another very good question and difficult one, and something that I'm still grappling with. It's a lot about relationship driving. And I was in the marketing position where I was helping building campaigns for 10 countries, right? So working in Southeast Asia taught me that you cannot assume clients buy legal services in the same way, right, in every market. So if you're doing a campaign in Cambodia or Laos or Thailand, it will be very different than the campaign that you do in Singapore, for example. We're super like New York style.
Right.
So you really have to pay attention to the context. Relationships dynamics are very different. In the US and North America, maybe not so much, like Louisiana versus Pennsylvania versus California, maybe there's a little bit of a difference, but I think the firms can still be like more direct, right? There's
Right.
more, but there's more pressure to stand out, to move fast, to be noisy, doing all of that. So I don't know, it's complex, but I think the relationship, the way you present a proposal, for example, if you're preparing a pitch for a Cambodian client versus a Japanese client, completely different.
Yeah.
So here I'm trying to figure out how can I take that sort of contextualize campaign, and I'm in Pennsylvania, East Coast. Like, how can I do a campaign for Philadelphia versus Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is a little bit different, right? So are the needs different, or how do I prepare a campaign differently for healthcare sector versus the environmental sector? So just trying to figure out how I can take those relationship experiences and things and not just make sort of a cookie cutter approach.
Well, I think that
I don't know.
changes
I
too,
don't
right?
know.
By knowing, we talk a lot about like audiences, knowing who your audience is. But a lot of times knowing who you are too. And then how do you shift that messaging by staying true to yourself? Just because your audience may shift, you want to talk to them in the way that they're going to respond with their needs. But you also don't want to be a chameleon where you're changing or every time you move into a new market or a new audience, to say, okay, we're gonna be this to this person. You still have to be who you are, right? You still have to represent who you are, no matter what situation you're in.
Well, that's it. And I think the marketers are in a very difficult time. They're trying to navigate all the AI slop that they're seeing and all it's so easy to prepare content and make it really polished and pretty and just pump content out there, but it's not going to be useful. It's not going to be authentic. And the second someone, a purchaser of legal services, like investigate your firm, they're going to see kind of right through that. So the marketing teams really need to distill down into the differentiator, and there's very few differentiators in the legal industry, right? Everyone can hire a Harvard grad. Everyone can put their fees down as low as possible, but there are some things that that really differentiate you amongst the others.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
spent talking about the AI thing. I spent a week with at the University of Florida e-discovery conference they had in Gainesville last month. Our client was there, and I went there to kind of visit with them and to do some photography and whatnot. And I sat through 2 days of sessions, and every single person that got up and talked, AI was the topic. It was crazy. But what I found that wasn't surprising because that's going on and everybody's talking about it. But what shocked me from a marketing standpoint was that how every person got up there and bragged on their AI presentation. I didn't do any of this. AI did this, or AI did this, and it was over and over and over again. And as at the end of it, I wish I can go back to all of them and say, yeah, none of it was very great, because it was all the same. There was nothing that stood out. I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't remember what brand was relevant or not relevant, what they had to say or not say. It all looked fine. It looked professionally done, but there was no soul to any of it. And I think that's what's missing sometimes when people go straight to that, and they just like, they're very proud that I can go in and present, have an entire keynote presentation up in minutes, and I can do this and I can do that, but you end up with not a lot of meat,
Yeah, soulless content, right? The marketing teams have to prove what the firm is about, right? They have to show it, and you can't fake like authenticity. Like, you can try, but if you're consistently just putting out the same sort of content, there's really no differentiator. A lot of firms struggle with finding an opinion, like having an opinion about a topic. Lawyers rather, are, like I said, are adverse to risk. They'd want to tell the client, this is what the law says. The clients want them to tell them, okay, but what do you recommend? It's like that commerciality to it. And I think marketing teams, generally, if you're in a marketing team, mid-sized, big firm, and you're trying to like edit a piece of content, like, are you going to write that opinion, like put that opinion in there for the attorney? Are you going to draw it out of them? Are you confident that you can actually share that? And then if you give your opinion on this, well, what about the other clients who you support who are office? So it's a tricky situation. So marketers have their work cut out to really prove and show what the firm's about and what makes them unique. And not every firm is unique, right? Some firms are not places that I would want to work. So how are you going to market that?
Yeah, and there's so much personality involved in that too, right? I mean, every firm has your higher level attorneys, you have your lower level, ones that want to grow within the system, become partners, that kind of thing. But their thought leadership is so important because they're each their own brand in a way. When they're out marketing themselves, yeah, I'm a member of, Smith, Bob, and Weatherstone, but at the same time, it's me that I'm selling, like my client list, my reputation, there's a lot of my involved in that. It's not a whole lot of we, even though that's part of the bigger picture. So I would think that's a challenge as well, is balancing all that ego and that personality and that's wrapped up into that.
And a lot of things that's derived a lot from firm compensation. How is the firm fundamentally structured? There's lots of different compensation models. There's sort of that eat what you kill, right? Each firm or each attorney, each practice group, kind of they find their own clients and all of that. But that leads to practice groups that don't share contacts, don't share, referrals, don't share content ideas. So from a marketing standpoint, how are you going to do a cross-surveying or cross-selling? It becomes very difficult. So it's really down to firm culture, and that's a whole separate topic. But hopefully you're in a firm that actually is, you hire the attorney, and you don't just hire the attorney, you hire the whole firm. But a lot of buyers of legal services, they hire an attorney and then they don't get passed on to other practice groups because they're very competitive. So marketing, it really depends on what type of firm culture you have, and that's something that marketing teams can't really change. And if they do try and show that on social, like, oh, we're collaborative and all of that, it's just, you can see right through it, I think.
But we're forced more and more to deal with those things. It used to be, I'm going to do a campaign and I'm going to roll this out, whatever it is, my ads, my this, my that. I'm going to plan the media buy, I'm going to plan the creative, all these different things. But I find, like, in our process, we have it's called Razor Branding. It's kind of an in-depth assessment of brands before we kind of take them on. And a lot of that, we end up being psychologists, business trainers, culture builder, like there's so many things that fall under our purview that weren't that way a year ago or 5 years ago,
Yeah, I think because buyers are becoming more price sensitive, they are now starting to really shop around, right? And they're really starting to, put out the proposal to multiple law firms, see who responds back. How do they respond back? Are we getting boilerplate text, or is it tailored to us? I've even spoke to some BD teams where, like, the clients actually call up competitors, call up people like alumni, like they really do some research and figure out, like, is this a firm that I want to work with? Because you're not buying the logo, you're buying the attorney, you're buying the client experience, and that client experience is something that the marketing teams and business development teams and operational teams really help shape at a law firm. And that's one of the things that I think in law firms gets left by the wayside. Like, oh yes, marketing teams are setting up all the things and it's getting stuff out, but really it's that client experience too, which is a big piece of that relationship building funnel that keeps people coming back. Like in Southeast Asia, one of the things that I did when I started at another firm was we did a full appraisal of all of our competitors. Like we sent out an RFP. We measured how long did it take for them to respond, who responded, did they ask follow-up questions, did we hear the price before we saw the price, right? Things like that. And then we found that to stand out, it really didn't take much, right? Really, it really didn't. All you had to do was have an attorney or even like a junior legal assistant like, call them up and ask them some follow-up questions before you spend time submitting a proposal. Yeah. Most of the times the law firms just sent back a cookie cutter proposal, right? So it is wild. The bare minimum that you could do, it was being done, and nothing above that. So you just have to go a little bit above the expected, and then you'll be fine.
Isn't that crazy to think you just have to not suck? Like that's the line, right? You just have to be above sucking. And yet still sometimes people will ghost you and not hire you because they don't even understand how bad the other guy is.
You know, it's funny. Most legal marketers or business developers never bought legal services before.
Yep.
I, knock on wood, have never bought or won't never need to buy a lawyer or services, right? So it's very difficult to kind of put yourself in the shoes of a buyer. But if you're a marketer and like tires or something, like we've all had to buy ice cream or go to Target and buy things. We see what marketing things work, but in the legal industry, it's a little bit different. And the same playbook that, you know, marketing 101, it is not going to work in a law firm. It's a little bit different. So it really will help marketing teams, and not just in legal services, but any marketing team, to really dig into those client feedback surveys, the user, the client journey. Do secret shopper or secret Santa or whatever with your firm. Pretend to be a client, call your one office and just see what the experience is like and use that to help increase your
yeah, you can learn a lot with that. I mean, you can definitely learn a lot. One thing I've noticed on your website, which I find fascinating, is the McNees alumni page. I've never seen a company have that, but I love it. I love it. The fact that you have it.
There's a lot going on with the McNees brand. We're doing a lot of transformation. I'll just leave it there. But yes, the web experience is really important. And being able, that's a whole nother podcast, law firm websites. I've looked at more than my fair share. And there's some very easy things that marketers can do. But yes, alumni. I'm lucky enough at McNees where we have lots of boomerangs. So people leave and then they're like, oh, I don't like it over there. And then they come back. But your alumni are some of your biggest cheerleaders. Mm-hmm. You have an event. Invite alumni, right? Give them a free coupon to join the event, right? Feature them. We do an alumni newsletter spotlight twice a year. We have events, local events. We bring alumni in. They're your biggest champion because they know what it's like to work behind the scenes in the law firm. And I'm more than happy to, well, hopefully they are, share all the good stuff
but it speaks volumes for the company itself. The fact that you have an alumni, the fact that people are leaving and still under good terms, usually people don't leave unless it's bad, and there's a misconception with some of that, but it's the fact that there's people that are really loyal or that care enough about this company as a whole to say, I was part of this at one time.
Some of it's self-serving, right? Because
absolutely.
Think how much or how expensive it is to train someone, onboard them, and all of that, all for them just to leave to get another, and there's always going to be another firm offering more money, right? But nowadays with Gen Z coming in, it's completely different. The generational shifts between your sort of more senior attorneys and the new generation who are coming in, they see work as almost like a hobby, not like I'm coming in 12 hours a day grinding to be a partner. A lot of the new lawyers that are coming in don't even want to be a partner. They just like the law and they want to help people, and they also want to serve on boards. They want to serve on a local bar association. So if you're a marketer, that's fantastic for you. So if you can encourage your attorneys, your product, right, to get out in the community, to actually be seen, be more than just a lawyer reading a contract, but to actually provide local context to the advice that you're giving is a gold mine. So yeah, really encouraging alumni participation, and just make your place, or make your company a fun place to work, and people will sing its praises. Pretty basic, but easier said than done, right?
Well,
Yeah,
I don't
but
think it's basic at
matters.
all.
No.
Maybe I'm just lucky.
It's a basic idea, but hard to accomplish. I mean, it takes a lot of moving pieces for that to all work together. But when it does work together, like I said, if you're able to put that out there and say, yeah, we're a company that has this network of, it just expands the scope internally and externally.
I think it all goes back to compensation. So if your end of year reviews only look at the time billed, well, that's all you're going to get. But if your performance evaluation forms or systems and metrics account for community development time, the leadership is encouraging that time, and you actually get benefits that counts towards a bonus, right? Well, you're going to incentivize the right things. It's all about incentivization. And marketers need to incentivize attorneys to write content. So, and be out there and participate in the marketing of the firm. The staff is your biggest ambassador, your biggest sales asset. So you really have to, marketing is so encompassing, so holistic. You're not just marketing externally, you're also marketing internally. Internal communications is a whole thing, right? If you have multiple offices, you have to market what one office is doing to another office, so that those two groups can work as one firm. You'll find, law firm of Schmidt, whatever. They have multiple offices, but each office has its own environment, its own thing. It's not one firm, and that's
its own culture.
Its own culture, its own environment. And in Southeast Asia, we had different countries, right? So it was even compounded. So we spent a great deal of time, the marketing team in Southeast Asia, if you're a multi-jurisdictional firm, really finding ways to get the teams to work together, to get to know, to talk about. Because if you're in Indonesia and you have a client from Germany who might be wanting to go set up a manufacturing plant in Vietnam, well, you need to know a little bit about Vietnamese regulation, right? You need to be an Asian lawyer, not just a Malaysian lawyer. Here, if you're in one practice group, you need to be able to talk about what's going on in the firm, what are companies facing that's not just in your niche. And that's where the marketing teams can really help, sharing internal news and celebrating wins on internet, and just fostering that cohesive community.
Agree. One of the things, earlier we talked about the AI slop around marketing. It seems like some of the biggest industries that are being impacted by the do-it-yourselfers using AI are marketing, coding, and legal. People are using AI to create their documents. What are y'all doing about that? How are you embracing it, running away from it, educating people on its challenges? I know for us, the Supreme Court recently ruled that if you use AI to create a logo, it cannot be legally protected and copyrighted. So all those people who are do-it-yourself logoing are going to run themselves into a bit of a pickle if they're not careful. So what are y'all doing to, figure that out?
Well, there's multiple angles to that question. First is we need to help the attorneys explain that to their clients, right? So like there's that whole client first sort of like, okay, how does it impact clients? But yeah,
Right.
from an operational standpoint, the legal industry is using AI to help review contract, to help create documents. If you're not familiar with like lawyer, a lot of junior attorneys, a lot of their time is like opening up a template or taking an old agreement and swapping out the names
Right.
and the dates and all of that. And it's a very manual, error ridden process, right? Now with AI tools or AI assisted tools, that helps you breathe straight through that. There's like a prompt or there's a questions like buyer, seller, seller's address. You just fill in all the details and it generates the template based on your firm's template. And then the attorney can go in and edit that. Or if you have the client giving back red line edits, you can very quickly compare the two and see what was missed or precedences, right? You don't need to read through mounds of books. You can just ask, what are the precedences in US case law? And it knows it better, right, than any attorney could. So law firms, lawyers, they're using it to speed up their work. But because of that, clients are now thinking, oh, well, why am I still paying you the same amount when you can do things faster? Shouldn't I be getting more? But then the law firms lie. You're getting more value, so the price should go. So there's that whole back and forth. But from a marketing standpoint, we need to be very, 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 very careful about how we use it, right? It's very easy to, because you have to have like a sandbox of, you can't input any client data into that or fees or anything like that. So I think a lot of BD people, marketing people, they're using it as like an intern, like, oh, all right, help me generate 7 different event titles for this event, right? Or how can I repurpose this content? Or give me some ideas on how I could turn this article that we wrote into an infographic. Or help me write a Excel formula that looks up these, this, and this, and make my life easier so I don't have to copy and paste everything into it. So there's that sort of workflow process, which is helping. But from a content, I mean, it's all becoming so vanilla and generic, right? So I don't really see it being used to like craft a campaign language or content. It might be used to help proofread and quality check and things like that, because now you can put your brand guidelines or your editorial guidelines into AI, and then everyone in the firm can kind of make sure they're using the correct terminology for something. So it helps with consistency. But yeah, from a marketing standpoint, maybe it's just because I'm 40 years old and a bit old man when it comes to this stuff, but I'm a very cautious about using it for creative. I still think there's
I think I like to call it, I think we're living in the age of mediocrity in a lot of ways because there's so much being pushed out there. It's just like I said, noisy, it's busy. Everybody's producing content, everybody's forcing it out there, and because you don't know how to turn it off. It's like a faucet, right? And somebody goes to AI and says, I need this. When it finishes, it says, well, would you like me to do this, this, and this? Sure. Let's do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it agrees with you most of the time.
Yes.
You're like, that was a fantastic idea. But it didn't bring in the whole context about your firm or the market or whatever. It may not know that you have a client who is adverse to that position or something, unless it might be in the future. And the future might be 2 or 3 years down the line, as quick as things are moving. But I don't know. I think marketing, BD teams, the admin teams can use it to speed up a lot of the manual stuff that's, you have to do more than twice. Just automate that.
Right.
But really like strategy, creativity. There's just a human element to that. You really have to surface a humanity in everything that you're doing, and how does it impact humans? Storytell, right? The whole storytelling
Right.
part of social. People want to be entertained. They just don't want generic corporate speak full of M dashes. So yeah.
Agree. Will, this was awesome. This was exactly what I was hoping we could talk about, and I think it's going to be helpful to everybody that listens. So thank you for your time.
Yes, yes. I mean, we've just talked about the tip of the iceberg. There's so much that goes on in a law firm and just marketing in general. We could be chatting for
I would
days.
stick around for another 3 hours, but I think our listeners are going to be like, hey, do another
Yes.
episode, guys.
Yes, yes. Happy to do so. But yes, I'm glad
Awesome.
you found it interesting.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
When the day is through.